Okay, welcome back, everyone. This is our second episode of Breaking Israel News Prophecy Talk. I am David Sidman, editor of Breaking Israel News, here with my writer, Eliyahu, Adam Berkowitz. He is right now in the Golan. I am in Ephrat, which is in Judea, two very controversial areas of Israel, but to us, it's a great source of pride. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the left, and more specifically the Democrats, and what exactly is going on in America right now. So I'm just going to start off and give you the big picture. What you're seeing right now is at least two-pronged attack by the jihad onto the American people inside the government and outside the government. And I'm going to explain to you what I mean. So first of all, there's this woman, Rashida Tlaib, or Tlaib, I don't know if I'm saying her name right. And let me give you a quick disclaimer. I usually don't care about American politics. What goes on there, it's not necessarily my problem because I'm here in Israel, and this is the country I care about. Israeli politics I care very deeply about. American politics, it wasn't really something that I paid too much attention to. But then after I spoke to you today, Eliyahu, I started realizing, you know, they kind of, these people, including Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Cortez, they're taking the fight to us, meaning they're invoking Israel into their agenda when there's absolutely no need to. Rashida Tlaib doesn't need to start talking about how Palestinians somehow comforted Holocaust survivors. It's not only is it revising history and complete propaganda, but it has nothing to do with you being a U.S. Congresswoman. And then you have Ilhan Omar, who's now going, who we exposed today, is now going to submit a resolution to promote the boycott, divestment, and sanction. Why are you using your taxpayers' dollar to do that? How are you serving the American people? How does any of this have to do with you serving in Congress? It has nothing to do with you serving in Congress, and has everything to do with that you're a part of a greater agenda to eliminate Israel's last friend in the world, which is America. They want Israel to be 100% isolated. It's not enough that 95% of the world's countries vote against us in the UN. They want to make it 100, and they'll use the American taxpayers and their platform as US Congresswomen to do that. So for example, today, Rashida Tlaib is saying that Israel has racist policies. This is a woman who says she's comforted when she hears about the Holocaust. And she says that Arabs back post-Holocaust took in Jewish refugees, which is the exact opposite is true. First of all, there is no other nation more loyal to no nation more loyal to Hitler outside of Europe than the Arabs who lived in Israel, who now call themselves Palestinians. It was well known that Hajj Amin al-Husseini was a close ally of Hitler, and many of them were Nazi supporters. Second of all, these same refugees from the Holocaust, who Tlaib claims that the Palestinians cared for, were the ones who were hunted down by the Arab legions in the War of Independence. Now, that's the first prong attack. That's the care Muslim Brotherhood jihad supported jihad, holy war, whatever you want to call it, onslaught from inside the government. But there's something else going on here. There's if not now. Now I know these people very well. I'm gonna post one. I'll post one of these days a video I had where I basically take on 10 if not now activists, and I just decimate them with facts one by one, and it's very embarrassing for them. They actually know exactly who I am. I've shown up and they recognize me right away and run away. But here's the thing. If not now is the second prong attack. They're the ones who attack from the outside. So what they're doing right now is they are trolling every Democratic 2020 candidate and putting them on the spot and trying to get them to say that, trying to pressure them to agree to pressure Netanyahu to end the occupation. Eliyahu, I know I'm talking a lot, but don't run away quite yet.
Actually, the camera only shows you when you're speaking. So, but you got me thinking, and I'm looking for a source. You're saying very holy things. You're just saying them in very normal language.
I know I tend to go on and on. So here's the thing. So if not now, an organization I'm very familiar with is backed by the Rockefeller Brothers Association, Foundation. Even though they pretend to be a grassroots group, they're anything but. They are well backed and well funded by the Rockefeller Brothers Foundation. And what they're doing is they're causing every Democratic 2020 candidate, they're going to put them on the spot and make them say that they are going to push Netanyahu to end the occupation. When they say occupation, it's obviously a euphemism for ethnically cleansing Judea and Samaria of all its Jewish presence and trace of any Jewish of anything Jewish from there, which is exactly what happened in Gush Katif. And they don't care if there's a peace agreement or not. Not that it matters, but they would like at any cost to see the Jews ethnically cleansed from the place in Israel where the bulk of the Jewish history is found, which is Judea, Samaria, and East Jerusalem. And that's their goal. And so what they're doing is they're putting these people on the spot with cameras like Elizabeth Warren. And I want to take a few seconds to talk about Elizabeth Warren. Why do I want to talk about Elizabeth Warren? I will tell you why. Because if you knew what Elizabeth Warren said in 2014 versus what she said when these If Not Now trolls approached her, it's night and day. It's a completely different Democratic Party than we saw even when Barack Obama was in charge. Those aren't my words. Those are actually the words of another Democratic candidate for president, Ami Horowitz. And that's a different subject. So back in 2014, Elizabeth Warren said, quote, America has a very special relationship with Israel. Israel lives in a very dangerous part of the world and part of the world where there aren't many liberal democracies and democracies that are controlled by rule of law. And we very much need an ally in that part of the world. When asked by a member of the audience regarding civilian casualties from Israel's strikes, Warren said she thinks that those are the last thing Israel wants. And then she goes on, but when Hamas puts its rocket launchers next to hospitals, next to schools, they're using their civilian population to protect their military assets. And I believe Israel has a right at that point to defend itself. That's Elizabeth Warren. Okay? Oh, and there's more. Another woman proposed that Israel should be prevented from building any more settlements as a condition for future US aid. Warren said, I think there's a question whether we should go that far. So Warren was in favor of building settlements in Judea and Samaria, and she agreed that Israel had the right to protect itself, and she sided with Israel over Hamas in the war. Now, if not now, in one fell swoop goes Elizabeth Warren. Are you going to pressure Netanyahu to execute an end to the occupation? And she right away said, yes, I'm there. We have the video on our site. If anyone wants to see it, put a comment, and we'll put it in the comments. We'll put the video in the comments. And it just goes to show how quickly these people are changing their stripes because they understand a few things. First of all, the most important thing that you need to understand is that Ilhan Omar, without Trump even realizing, Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Rashida Tlaib are legitimizing their viewpoint on Israel. How are they doing that? Because when they can't speak out against America, they can't say America's bad because no, that's not going to resonate well even with liberals. But if they start attacking Israel and Trump marks them as the enemy, which is exactly what he did, he marked them as the enemy. Now, Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar are the enemies of Trump, which means even people who were middle of the road left wing but hated Trump are going to start, my enemy's enemy is my friend. They're going to start legitimizing Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib's sentiments because they share a common enemy. And that's exactly what they're doing. And they're doing it without Trump even realizing it. And people are going to fall for it. People are going to look to people like Linda Sarsour, who led the march against Trump, and look to Rashida Tlaib and look to Ilhan Omar, even if they don't agree with them, which they don't, because these are Muslim women. I mean, you have Ilhan Omar who wears a hijab, and she And she is siding with these people who want late-term abortions and people who are pro-gay marriage. They have these liberals are going to start siding with them, even if they agree with 95% of what their religion believes, because they are Trump's enemy, and that's all they see. And they don't have any real values of their own. Eliyahu, I know he said a lot, but this is where you're gonna pick up the slack.
Okay.
Try to help the audience make sense of all this.
Absolutely. So, first of all, I agree with everything you say. One day we're going to do a video where I disagree with you, and that's going to be a very different video. I entirely disagree with absolutely everything you said. To be honest, I think we both come from a different, from the same space. We just express it differently. You said, that it's kind of surprising that the fight is ending up by us, and I don't think that's true. I think the fight was always going to come to Israel. If you have any belief in prophecy, the fight is always going to come to Israel. Gog and Magog, everything, it comes to Israel. And in a sense, all throughout human history, Jews and Israel have been a litmus test. It's not that Jews are so wonderful, and it's not that Israel is faultless. It's just that, we see through history that any nation that has come up against Israel has been defined by history as evil. And it's not because Israel was, the hero, the great. We were the tool, the method by which this aspect of the nation was proven. Rome had some great points, but when they came up against Israel, bad. Okay, and I think that's what's happening today. So Israel and the Jews are a litmus test, and the U.S. is an essential part of this. The U.S., I think, at this point, is being tested. It's the essential aspects of America are being tested. America has had a short an amazing history. I'm sorry, 250 years is not so long. I remember I grew up in Philadelphia, Betsy Ross house, 250 years. Then you move to Jerusalem, 250 years is a sublet. It's like we're talking about, finding places that are 5,000 years old, 7,000 years old. So America is young, but I think it's being tested. There's a check going on to see what is the real essence of America. And that's why it's becoming so polarized. America right now is in a process of identifying itself. Just as, that's the first question God asks the prophets when he first meet them is, where are you? And I think right now America is being asked, where are you? And it's becoming polarized. So America walks up to the politicians and says, where are you? Oh, you're Democrat. Democrat is pro-Israel. Is it? Is it really? So there's this litmus test going on. And this is something that actually, and this is why I popped off the screen, I don't think the viewer saw this. I was looking for a book, and it was in reference to what you were saying. There's an amazing Mishnah, what we call the oral, it's the oral Torah, it's the oral law, in a section of the Mishnah called Eduyot, which literally means witnessing. It's a very special section that not everyone learns. It's unusual in a lot of ways. But what's amazing is the very last Mishnah says, Amar Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua said, I received this teaching from Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, and he heard it from his rabbi, who heard it from his rabbi, who heard it from his rabbi. And this is a teaching from Moses at Mount Sinai. And it says that, why does Eliyahu HaNavi come, Eliyahu the prophet, come before the Messiah? What purpose? What do you need this Eliyahu, Elijah the prophet, coming before the Messiah? And it says something amazing. He says the only reason he comes is to say this is pure, this is impure, this person forced their way in, and now we got to push him out, and this person got pushed out, and now we got to bring him back in. And it goes into a lot of details about how this process goes on. And I've heard from my dear Christian friends that this is a process of what they call sheeps and goats. The process preceding Messiah is going to be a process of clarification. Where do you stand? Where are you? Like God always asks the prophets when he first meets them. He asked Moses, he asked a lot of all the prophets, where are you? And it's really a question of what your identity is. And I think America is being tested right now. This is God asking America, where are you? And Israel is the litmus test. And as a result, what's very interesting is, and we take it for granted, though it really makes absolutely no sense. And I think this is unprecedented in American history, that politics is being sharply divided along religious lines. And that isn't a given. It doesn't have to be that way, but it is. So the question is, why is it that way? And to be honest, I think it comes down to, it's not a question of Democrat, Republican, immigration, security, economy. What it's coming down to is God versus not God, anti-God. Anti-God. People who cannot tolerate any sense of goodness. I remember one of the things that struck me at the whole Brett Kavanaugh thing was Brett Kavanaugh. I mean, he had his diary, and he had in it service projects. And he said, I didn't, and they're like, well, you didn't go to church. And he said, I don't write at church. I didn't write that I woke up and had a cup of water. It's just something you do. You go to church. And the attacks on Brett Kavanaugh, I think, were the attacks of people who just said, there's no possible way that a man who believes in God and believes in good can really be true. They wanted to prove that that was a lie. This whole thing is there good? Is there God? Is there a lie? And that's a process of clarification, of selection that's inherent in the days before the Messiah. And I wanted to bring a couple of articles I've written when it comes to the left. It's interesting that the left wing is called left. I did an interview with Rav Matasiyahu Glazerson, who's known for doing Torah codes, and he said something really amazing. He said that it's known amongst the rabbis that left wing is inherently not good because it is left. Left in Hebrew is the word smol. And the word smol, if you change the sheen to a samech, which are both sound as an S sound, smol becomes Samael, who is, I shouldn't even say it at night, it's the name of the dark angel. And that is the side that they've attached to. It's the side of left side is the side of judgment. And judgment is characterized by limitation or contraction. And most especially when it's in its bad sense, it's what happened was the Erev Rav, the mixed multitudes, when they made the golden calf, what they were doing is they were saying, we cannot have a God that we cannot see because that means he's everywhere. We need a small God. They wanted to contract God. And this is actually what's happening in the left wing. They are saying we cannot have an all-encompassing morality. We want to establish what the morality is. And that is the mixed multitude. It's interesting, the left side is the side of judgment. And the left wing calls themselves the social justice warriors. They are willing to sacrifice the individual for the sake of justice. And I think, interestingly enough, that there's a counterintuitive alliance between the left wing and Islam, which they have no shared values at all. And many of the basic beliefs and values of the left wing are seriously contradicted by Islam. I mean, to see women who are advocating for Sharia law leading feminist rallies is just, I'm sorry, it's beyond science fiction. It's idiocy. But what they do, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what the left wing, pardon me, and the Muslims have in common is that they do share an unhealthy, unbalanced attachment to justice, but a broken form of justice.
I thought you were going to say the one thing they share is their hatred of Israel and the Jewish nation state. And despite the fact that everything the left believes is contrary to Islam, and despite the fact that everything that these women who follow Linda Sarsour in their marches, they would be executed in her country and Linda Sarsour wouldn't lose an hour of sleep over it. The fact that they're brought together by this common hatred of Israel just buttresses how blind and irrational anti-Semitism is.
Linda Sarsour advocates for Sharia, but according to Sharia law, she should not go out in public wearing makeup. So she's kind of fudging it. But the point being that Islam, there's the social justice warriors say, we are willing to sacrifice the individual for a greater justice, a social justice. And Islam says, we are willing to sacrifice ourselves to come and explode next to you in order to express our justice. So it's a hugely unhealthy aspect of justice that they share.
Can I just add one thing?
Sure.
What's interesting about what you're saying is that if you notice, the word justice is always invoked when they talk about like, for example, when Sadat spoke in Jerusalem before the Camp David Accords in 1979, he kept repeating the phrase "a just peace," a just peace. He never just said peace. He never said exclusively the word peace. It was always a just peace. And whenever the Palestinians, release their propaganda, it's always justice and equality for all. A just solution, a just peace. Israel's talking about peace, but the Arabs will always put that word "just." The Muslims will always put that word "a just peace" right before it. Go on.
Okay. I had a lot of respect for Sadat. But another thing that they share, and this is something you touched on, it's something I learned from listening to Ben Shapiro speaking with, what was his name? Daniel Hannan. He's a British politician. And there's something that the return of Israel brought to the world that was disappearing, and it's an essential thing, and it's very dangerous to take it out of the world. The story of the Jews, I mean, the Jews and the Christians are, of course, strong believers in the eternal aspect of the covenant. So on one hand, we do have the covenant. But what is the covenant? Jews are, I think, unique in that our approach to God is as a nation and not as individuals. The story of Israel and our return to Israel, the story of the Jews and our return to Israel, is the ultimate epic saga of nationalism in its purest and finest form. We were a nation even without our land. We came back, and even more so. It's the belief in nationalism. And now, if you say that you're pro-nationalism, this was Candace Owens got slammed when she was in front of the Congress by the Democrats in the most disgusting manner, because they said, "Oh, you're pro-nationalism." And she said, "Yes, I am." Israel is the largest, most graphic, most in-your-face challenge to anti-nationalism, to a one world order, to a borderless world. We are the challenge. Not only are we the challenge in that we have our saga, we have our epic saga, our story, and our covenant. But these people are fighting a God which created 70 nations. That was his covenant. His covenant was not just, hey, the whole world will be Jewish. No, that was not his covenant. His covenant was that there will be Israel and there will be 70 nations. That was really the secret of Jacob's dream. The angels going up and down were the angels of the nations. It is required to have 70 nations. We cannot have a one world order. Borders are holy. Borders and national identity.
Right, and this is something that goes all the way back to the Tower of Babel. And the idea of the Tower of Babel is still alive and kicking. I mean, I don't think it's a consequence that Israel's greatest enemy in the West is none other than the European Union. What is the European Union? They don't want Europe to be fragmented into different countries, despite the fact that Spain speaks a different language than the UK. As far as they're concerned, it must be one united Europe. Now, I can think of another regime who wanted a united Europe a little bit before the European Union, and that would be the Reich. Hitler always dreamed of united Europe, and I don't think I think what you're hitting on something very important that a lot of people don't realize. The more the world leadership is against nation states, the more they're against Israel. And by the way, that includes the Arabs too, who never really adopted the concept of borders. It was always kind of clan wars throughout massive regions of the Ottoman Empire, for example. Their culture never really adapted to the idea of a nation state. And a great example of that are countries like Lebanon, where Sunnis are Sunnis versus Shiites and Christians versus Druze, and they're all kind of fighting each other. And or Syria, where Kurds are fighting. They can't unite under these borders. They have these fragmented ethnic tribes, and that's their culture. And that's also what they have in common with the left, is that the extreme left is against these borders and against these nation states. They want to bring it all down. And I think you hit the nail right on the head when you said the Jewish people is the epitome of a story of nationalism. And the fact that we pray, 3 times a day to return to Jerusalem is not because, like you said, it's an individual religion. It's a team sport.
I also want to point out something that is really probably one of the most uncomfortable things for me to speak about. And I absolutely do not take this lightly. It's painful. It literally is painful for me to speak about this, which is the final redemption is supposed to be a reload of the Exodus from Egypt. And when we speak about the mixed multitude, we are speaking about Jews. When I grew up, Orthodox, conservative, reform, doesn't matter what Jew you were, there were 2 values we shared, all of us, that were very strong. One was that we wanted to marry Jews and have a Jewish family. And the other was you supported Israel, Orthodox, conservative, reform. And that was, I think, the basis of Jews who have liberal values, why they were always Democrat. But the change in the Democratic Party is actually a reflection of a change within Judaism, where the American Jews have turned their back on Israel, and they have taken on the role of Erev Rav, of mixed multitude in its full glory, where they turn around and say, hey, no, not Israel, Egypt. We want to go back to Egypt. We don't want a big God. We want to make God really small and convenient for us. And there's Rabbi Pinchas Winston said something really interesting. He said that, first of all, that the mixed multitude, the Jewish mixed multitude, is going to be the ally of the enemies of Israel. But strangely enough, he also describes that there are 2 enemies of Israel that are going to come in the end of days. One is the bad side of Esau, of Esav, of Edom, the red ones, and along with Ishmael, and they'll both come up against Israel. And the question is, if they both come up against Israel, but they seem so different, they're not the same people. And Rabbi Winston, he said, it's not so black and white, because what's going to happen is while they come up against Israel, they're actually going to be battling each other. I think that's where the left wing has problems, because they don't understand. I think I'd love to sit down and speak with some of these people. I'm like, okay, so radical Islam is not the problem. Well, if Iran starts shooting at us actively, if Iran develops a nuclear weapon, when these people say, oh, the Iran deal was good, it's like, how do you figure? You're making peace with them while they're calling death to America. There's going to be an end of days conflict between Esau and Ishmael while they are both attacking Israel.
Well, right now the conflict is one-sided. I mean, Ishmael, like I said a few weeks ago, by the grace of God, Paris is still a city, but it shouldn't have been, because the Iranian diplomats tried to smuggle in half a ton of explosives into France. I mean, can you imagine what kind of damage half a ton of explosives can do in crowded Paris? The war is there. I mean, white people in Europe, white Europeans are afraid to walk the streets. They're not really fighting back, but I mean, you could say it's a war. It's a one-sided war, but it's a war.
And what's crazy though is that these same white Europeans are anti-Israel, and that is illogical, because the very most basic reasoning of you're the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So you should say Israel should be the best friend of these people. But no, and it's amazing, like Sweden, which is it is the most national place you could be. Swedish is Swedish. They have everything, they have the language, the food, the borders, the history, but their culture and everything about them is just dwindling away. And yet they send these NGOs and they hate Israel. So despite the fact that Ishmael is attacking Sweden in some nefarious manners, Sweden is still anti-Israel. This is Esau coming up against Israel, even though in the end they're going to have to deal with Ishmael. So that is where the future, there is going to be an ultimate showdown there between Esav and Ishmael. But for the time being, it's Esav and Ishmael against Israel. But as I said, from the Mishnah that I read, there is going to be a process of clarification, and it's not as political as people think, because if you look at it, it's not as logical. It's not political. We are dealing with, I think, times where everyone's being tested. Everyone's being asked, where do you stand? And that's the real political question.
Yeah, I would say so. And I think that's a good place to end it. If I could just make a quick closing comment, since we're already on the topic of the mixed multitude. So I just want to explain to the American viewers at home what to expect during the election process. What If Not Now, who is the epitome of the mixed multitude, is trying to do is they're trying to place Israel as the front and center issue in the debate. I mean, they're trolling each and every Democratic candidate, and they're asking them to support an end to Israeli Jewish presence in Judea and Samaria, which is, as we said, the epitome of nationalism. Now, because it's become such a hot issue, thanks to this mixed multitude, who of course will preface all their questions by saying, "Hey, I'm Jewish and I want Israel out of the only place where they have all of their Jewish history," then what they're doing is and the other thing they're going to do is, if Trump loses and the Democratic candidate wins, they're going to release this video to as many media outlets as possible to hold the candidate's feet to the fire. So let's just say, God forbid, Elizabeth Warren wins the Democratic nomination, and she beats Trump. Unlikely scenario, but with the way the economy's going, you never know. What's going to happen is, if not now, is going to release the video, is going to keep releasing the video and paying PR firms a lot of money to get it to every media outlet, to keep the pressure on her, to constantly push Netanyahu or whoever the prime minister is in Israel for a Palestinian state. And in the meantime, before that happens, they're going to make the issue of Israel front and center of the Democratic elections. And you're going to see in the next Democratic debate, for the first time, the issue of Israel is going to come up, and it's going to be very interesting, because a lot of people are going to be afraid to backtrack this election cycle, and they might even go more extreme. Do you have any closing statements?
I actually do. You describe it so beautifully. You describe politics like a novel. And I just want to say, like, if people look at what's happening around us, if you start thinking logically, you're lost. But if you look at it, I mean, thank God we all read the Bible. If you look at this as a Bible story, you're writing your own character. Are you the friend of Jacob who helped him out are you Melchizedek? Who are you? And it's kind of, I feel so bad. I look at these women politicians, and I look at these other people, and I'm like, do you realize what characters you're playing out? Do you realize what biblical role you've taken on? And I think I've been blessed to meet a lot of my readers, and thank God for them. A lot of them, I could write another chapter in the Bible about these people. So many of them just have such strong belief and say it's the right thing to do. And it's really that simple. So yeah. I think
that's a good place to end it.
It's a great place to end it.
Thanks for watching. Please feel free to share this with anyone you think would be interested in hearing what's really going on in the world. And we appreciate you watching, and we appreciate your feedback. And shalom, and God bless you all.
And if there's anything you want us to speak about, to find sources on, feel free to send us a comment. We'll be putting our website and our emails on the video. Please be in touch.